All right, hey guys, welcome back to another episode. This is our second episode. So we have just started today, had our first one earlier, and today we're here with Bill Ault. And I have had the pleasure of having you as one of my soccer coaches for a long time.
Yep.
You also, pretty much you and Martin mentored me for good 5-6 years, Martin even longer, and becoming a coach to help kind of develop the next stage of soccer for young kids around here.
Yep.
So that's primarily how I know you and your journey, but I actually don't know a ton about what else you've been doing and what your back end story. Yeah. So I want to start kind of right from the beginning. First of all, can you talk a little bit about family life, where you were raised, where you kind of grew up? Because I like getting context as to see where the journey kind of takes you to where you are now.
Yeah. I grew up here in Eastern Ontario,
Okay.
about 30 minutes from Brockville. Mom, dad, one sister. My dad was a business owner. So for most of my life, from the time I was probably about 10, I think, we were in that entrepreneurial kind of self-employed business kind of lifestyle, which you don't really know as a kid, and you don't realize till later on in life that, oh, this is why I do what I do, because this is what I've known most of my life. So there's that part of it.
What business was that, sorry?
He was heavy construction.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, so I grew up in the heavy construction industry. Didn't work a lot for dad unless it was necessary.
Fair.
Summer jobs, 1 or 2 years after that, but mostly never with the intention of going into the industry. And I don't think I know my father did not want me to follow him into the business. He wanted us to make our own way, and that's where he
It's kind of interesting.
gently pushed us, to do our own thing.
You don't hear that from a lot of like entrepreneurial parents, because typically they want you to take over the business and keep it going.
It was partially because of the way dad grew up.
Yeah.
Dad was made, the head of the household at a very young age because his dad passed away. That my grandfather, they had built a huge small chickens industry and were really well off, and then lost everything in the Great Depression. So then shortly would have been probably I guess about the early 50s, my father would have been kind of forced into the role of the head of the family at a very young age, and a very large family. So I think part of it was he had grown up making himself, and he wanted us to do the same thing.
Did you have a good relationship as a whole, like with your
respected
family?
No, the family was great.
Yeah.
My mom was my anchor.
Yeah.
Me and my dad were always kind of, you look back now again and you think, well, we were just too similar.
Yeah.
So we banged heads.
Yep.
But not in a bad way necessarily, but
just a bit of friction.
And I lost him a few years ago, so that puts everything into focus too. And there's things that happen along the way with dad that you think, oh, God, I wish I had a second chance, but you don't have them, right? So you move on and you make adjustments. And so there was that. I went to school locally, went to high school in Iroquois, Seaway. Got to the end of 5 years of high school and really had no idea what I wanted to do with life.
Yep.
I had a guidance counselor that was very frustrated with me. I was a great student, just lousy at deciding what I wanted to do. And I was a lazy student because I could get away with it. If I could read it, I could remember it, and therefore I could spit out what I needed to get by.
We are very opposite in that way.
And so that was kind of, so I embarked on literally this is how it went. I had to make a portfolio because I decided, in kind of February what I wanted to do based on a TV program. I headed off to broadcasting at Niagara College.
Cool.
And, but literally in February I was making a portfolio for something that had to be ready for March to be interviewed to go to school the following September, right? And obviously the portfolio was good enough that it got me in the door. And then right after, even before I graduated, my third year, I ended up going work for the CBC out west.
Cool. I didn't actually realize that either.
That ended fairly quickly as there was layoffs rolled through the CBC, and we were the new guys. So I hadn't even finished school. The school had allowed me to go with the basis of that we will give you your diploma.
No way.
And I got laid off in February, and they said, we're not going to give you your diploma unless you come back and finish your work.
What?
So I came back to school for 2 months to finish my certificate in broadcasting, and then got home and, found a wife and had kids and ended up working at high school here in Brockville for 10 years, BCI.
Oh, so I didn't know that either.
And then,
what did you teach there? What did you do?
I was hired as an AV tech.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then they switched me over to being a library tech.
Yeah.
In the process. And then again in the mid 90s when there was a wave of layoffs, we got laid off. I went to St. Lawrence College for a couple of years to work there as AV tech. And then kind of decided I really didn't want to work for anybody else ever again. So started down the process of many, many, many businesses, and well, not many, but more than a handful.
What was your first venture? That you would say was kind of fully on your
probably
own?
Soccer.
Yeah.
Hey,
same here.
Canada Kicks. Canada Kicks. We did camps, and we optimistically called ourselves a soccer education company. So we work for a lot of clubs in Eastern Ontario. We drew up this with Martin, who you already mentioned.
Yep.
Club curriculums, coaching sessions, coaching the coaches, that sort of thing. And it was a good business. It really was a good business. We had a residential camp. We had day camps, that sort of thing. Cool. And it was good for me because I'm a bit of an introvert, unless I'm in a really comfortable setting.
Yep.
And on the field, I was always comfortable.
Yeah. That's cool.
So,
did you play all the way up until this point too? Because soccer, I'm assuming.
I grew up playing in Eastern Ontario men's leagues.
Okay.
In the days when there wasn't as much youth soccer.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Is because it wasn't as big as nearly what it is today.
The senior side was probably more advanced then than it is now.
Oh, interesting.
As far as quality.
Yeah.
And maybe not scale, but certainly in the quantity or quality was there.
Yeah.
We started playing, you started playing adult soccer when you were 15 or 14. Kind of took your lumps for years and then,
nice.
Kind of went from there.
Yep.
And then I got into the coaching side of it, and I ended up coaching, fairly high level. I coached the province for a while. Here in town with the college. The Ottawa Fury, of course.
Yeah.
Most people know me from there. That was a big learning,
What level, if I remember correctly, you've got a pretty high level of coaching too, as your actual credentials too, right?
No, I did. And it just, when they revamped everything there 4 or 5 years ago now, I just decided
not to.
I was close enough to the end of my career that I didn't want to go back and do my National B, and I didn't want to.
But you had your National B?
No, I had my provincial, whatever it was called.
Oh, okay.
Provincial B.
Cool.
And I was what did they call us? Learning facilitator, I think the OSA called us. The Ontario Soccer Association. That was my last.
Course credential.
That was my last big credential, was that I was a learning facilitator for the Ontario Soccer Association.
Cool.
And then it was kind of like, I'm at the end of things. I'm kind of, and I think it's important you realize when things are kind of winding down.
Yep.
We all know the stories of people that hang on for too long, and I'm kind of hoping I didn't.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where do I want to invest the time and energy? I miss the kids. I miss coaching. I'm not going to lie. I do miss coaching. This is the first year that I've really gone an interest back in the game again.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
It's like I started watching the EPL again in the late summer, and then I
just couldn't do it before.
No, I really couldn't. It's weird. It's weird when you spend so much time doing something and then all of a sudden you're not doing it. And then the World Cup was awesome, so that really got me back into it. So
it's a crazy World Cup.
And I just had a great conversation with one of the local soccer guys yesterday. He dropped off a plaque because we're one of the sponsors.
Cool.
And
that's fun.
We were talking about how things are going and stuff, and so it never completely leaves you, but at least you come at it with a different perspective now.
I think I remember you telling me too, you had every World Cup game or something taped from
1982.
That's awesome. You still have them?
Yeah.
That is so cool.
I have something that every once in a while people ask about too is the original Canadian Soccer League from 86 to 92, I think. They had a game of the week on TSN. I have all of them.
No way.
Yeah.
You just have them in like a storage container?
Even TSN doesn't have them.
For real?
For real. I learned that.
So some documentary crew that's going to come eventually who needs that footage, you're going to be able to charge an arm and a leg.
It's happened.
For real?
I've had people come and ask me for footage from the old Canadian Soccer
Do you
League.
charge them? Yeah. Got to do it.
Not usually.
Where's the entrepreneur in you there?
But it is funny.
That is hilarious.
I heard it the first time is that TSN had just basically erased all their tapes.
Too funny.
And so I'm sure there's other people out there that have some, but I have all of them.
Yep. So after your soccer camps and Canada Kicks with that company, what other ventures did you have? And then kind of leading into like what you're doing now. Yeah.
Well, there was some employment, but usually when there was employment, it was contract basis.
Yep.
Because I knew
smart
that I didn't want to do it forever.
Mm.
So there was a marketing firm in the U.S. that me and Martin worked together for. Martin much more than I did, but I was kind of there as a hang around, I guess.
Yeah.
We did a little bit of that up here. What else did I do? I worked for Club Link Golf for a while.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Okay. And, are you a golfer?
No.
Just worked for them.
Just worked for them.
Yeah.
I enjoy the game, but
yeah.
I'm not going to devote 4 hours of a day to
totally fair
chasing a little ball around the field. So it's not going to happen.
Well, you could argue a lot of people say the same thing about soccer.
They do, but it doesn't take 4 hours.
4 hours. Yeah, that's true. Fair enough.
And I'm relatively good at soccer. I may not be relatively good at golf.
Fair enough.
So my 4 hours could turn to 6.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So and then I guess the next one for me that's kind of interesting, anyways, was. I went to work for the Community Development Center, which is I forget what they call them now, Futures, Community Futures. And we did 2 projects right around the turn of the century. We did community access program, bringing the internet into schools and libraries.
Wow.
So that was a big thing back in 1999.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, we did one of the first, the public school in Johnstown.
Oh, cool.
We did one of the first satellite-based internet systems in the whole country.
Jeez.
Was in a little public school in Johnstown.
I did not know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then we did
Johnstown's kind of underrated.
Yeah.
Honestly, like industry-wise and some of the stuff that goes on there, people I feel like don't know, but it's like massive industry. Yeah. It's crazy.
Big.
That's cool.
And then we did the Y2K thing was part of the project there.
Yep.
And then that led into Canada Kicks, which was the soccer project, which led into some of the marketing stuff. I'm trying to remember all these things because then the Fury. So there's a lot of coaching. So there was the Fury was a full-time position, which was my first full-time position in soccer.
Cool.
So they hired me as the youth development officer.
Mm.
And so that was my first real, I can do this full-time sort of thing.
Yeah.
When I came out of the Fury, I became a technical director in Kingston for a few years. And then it became, now I'm back to, and one of the things that happened while I was in Kingston, I got hired by the Canadian Forces for a project in Afghanistan.
Wow.
So I spent almost 3 years as the music director for a pop radio station in Kandahar.
No way.
Wait.
I knew none of this stuff. That's wild.
So
how does that even come about?
You walk into a company called Calian, which does a lot of the outside contracting for the forces.
Okay.
And they have an office in Ottawa or in Kingston, and you will walk in because I was part-time as a technical director. Yep. And I'm one of those people that I have to be busy or I get into trouble. Yep. I get into trouble is that I just get lazy and I just don't do things.
I hear you.
So I was basically working evenings for the soccer club and weekends. So I was looking for something during the day. And in Kingston, of course, because of the base, there's so many contract positions supporting the forces. And Callion's one of the big companies that handles all that. So I just walked in and gave him a resume and said, okay, have you got anything? Well, do you know anything about radio? Well, I went to school for radio. Did a little work for the CBC. I had a radio program on Team 1200 for a little while in Ottawa. So I know a little bit about radio. Oh, we may have a job for you. So that led into a whole changeover in personnel. I was part of a big change in personnel for this project. A couple of the guys that are really important to me now came at the same time.
Cool.
Chris Bodden, who's based in Ottawa, he does weekends now, I think, for Shea.
No way.
Yeah, he works weekends in Shea, and he was the director. He was what was he called? Program director for K-Rock in Kingston at the time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they brought him into the project. And John Sanfilippo, who does, he has his own company called Titan Sound, a production company. He actually did the music for my podcast.
Cool.
And so those two guys are still really important.
Yep.
The people you meet along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So that project lasted 3 years, and that wrapped up. I came back home, and then you get into the kind of, okay, these are the things that happen to people in life. Your marriage falls apart. You're sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. And, this guy named Martin Noy, who we've already talked about way too much, drags
Maybe we need Martin on the podcast.
Drags me out of, feeling sorry for myself. It gets me into this property management kind of world.
Oh, yeah, right. I didn't know that.
And, I was there for 3, 4, almost 5 years, I guess.
Yep.
And then it was kind of like, oh, okay, so can we spin it off and do it ourselves or myself? Because Martin was getting out of that side of it, the services side of it.
Yep.
And made a new company.
Which is?
A+ Property Services.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, in developing two other companies. One's Northern Latitudes and the other one's called Taloncore.
So Northern Latitudes is the one I see on your Jeep
the
every
one you
time.
see in
I
the
always
Jeep
know it's you
town,
driving
right?
around. So tell me a little bit about that company, because I know kind of bare basics.
Northern Latitudes is kind of a company that's still in flux.
Okay.
And it's in flux only because I don't know what I want it to be.
Yeah.
It's a vanity project for sure, which coming from a guy that's not... I hope that vein is kind of weird, but it's landscape photography / outdoor brand.
Yep.
And I'm not sure what the outdoor brand of it means.
Sure.
Other than I know the logo's cool and the Jeep looks nice. And,
yeah. It does.
We have a podcast.
That's great.
And, it does well. And so it's still one of those ones. And it was set up, or it has been set up to basically be something for me to phase into as I, hit towards 65.
Yep.
And potential semi-retirement.
Yeah.
I don't ever see myself really retiring. So that becomes,
sound like my grandpa.
Yeah, it becomes more of a, well, my dad was like that too.
Yeah.
So it's more of a, what's it going to be over the next 10 years sort of thing. A+ is the one that pays the bills.
Yep.
And Talon is a little investment company that does okay.
Cool.
So
going back to kind of originally you were talking about with like growing up in the entrepreneurial family, how have you seen kind of like failures through things like with your grandpa with the Great Depression and business tanking, all that kind of stuff? Do you see that as building resilience for yourself, or how do you view failure?
Funniest thing about that story is I didn't even know about it until I would say the last 10 years or so.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Well, but again, you grow up in Eastern Ontario, small town Eastern Ontario, rural Eastern Ontario, and there's some things that families just don't talk about.
Yep.
And that was one of the things that just didn't get talked about. And as a kid, you grew up kind of really not knowing it even happened.
Yep.
My grandmother's house had this old 3-door carriage house behind it, and it was abandoned when we were kids growing up. It was basically just behind the house. It was like an old barn. We'd go in and explore and crawl around and see what we found. And there was all these things we didn't know what they were. But once years go on, you realize they were egg incubators.
Oh.
For the chicks. But it was never talked to us by the adults, including my parents. So it's funny, you find out that story later on. But you go through the good times and the bad times.
Of course.
Even as, I know when my father first started the business in the early 70s, I think 72 or 73, the mid-70s were tough because the oil crisis, inflation was, we complain about inflation now and interest rates. Well, welcome to the mid-70s when interest rates were 19-20%, and that was at the bank.
Yep.
That wasn't your credit card.
Yeah.
And it was hard. And I know my dad went through times when, it was tough to pay the bills, and it was tough to pay his employees. And
did you see that? Like
you did, then? Yeah, and you started to register it, right? As you get a little older, you start to realize what's going on. It's like, guys, I might not be able to pay you this week, but I'll get it to you next week, sort of thing. And you knew that was kind of happening.
Wow. Yeah.
But it was like you pull it together. And the thing is, in those days, there was none of the, or not none, but almost none of the government kind of support that we have now to start businesses and grants and loans and that sort of thing. Like none of that stuff existed. So you were doing it, you were growing it as you brought in money, you were growing.
Yep.
And that's one thing. I'm kind of lucky that way right now in that that's not the case. I mean, it's always the case to some extent, but I have enough of a buffer now at this point in life that I can say, if I need to keep things going for a couple of months, I can do it.
Yep.
And it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference in your decision making, and it makes a huge difference in how you want to grow or how you can grow.
Yeah.
Like we're actually right now with A+, we're looking at some, we hope, fairly substantial growth this year, which is kind of weird because most people aren't thinking about it, right?
Sure.
But for us, things are falling into place that should allow us to grow through this year and maybe even into next year. Now, there's all kinds of challenges that come with that. Finding people right now is one of them.
Yep.
But you kind of live through with my parents. And the other thing I learned from my parents was the diversification. Don't tie everything into one company.
Right.
Like when my father passed away, and we're still in the midst of wrapping things up because my mom subsequently passed away a few years later, in wrapping up 4 businesses.
Wow.
But that's
a lot.
It's a lot, but when you think about it, it makes sense. There's that, the old cliche about having a table. Well, a table has 4 legs, and it's like, that's the approach to building business as well. You need multiple revenue streams. You can't throw everything into one basket.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. And my father probably learned that from what his father went through.
Yeah.
Everything was tied into the egg business, the chicken business, So my dad was going to make sure that was never going to happen.
Yep.
If the equipment business went bankrupt, well, then there was the gas bar and this, or there was the company that invested in properties. There was all these things. And that's one thing for me. I mean, I'm not anywhere near the scale my father was, even close. But we have 3. And if I can find the 4th one, I'll find a 4th one. Because I think it's that important.
Yep.
It's just, and, like I said, I have A+ that pays the bills right now. I have Northern Latitudes that hopefully at some point will help pay for the bills. Talon is doing its share right now. It's small, but it's steady.
Yep.
And then what's the next one? Probably involves artificial intelligence, the way the world's going, but I don't know.
Seriously, at this point, man, that's crazy, hey? It is wild where AI is going at the moment.
So fast.
Yeah.
But that's the world too.
Yep.
I mean, A+, for example, was born in, September of 2019.
Yep.
What happened in the spring of 2020? It's like, okay, I've got a new business. It's 6 months old. I've got a piece of property we bought to flip.
Yeah.
And I've got a new truck.
Great.
Nice.
Yeah. So with that, then, how do you perceive the word like failure as a whole, or like, when you get in those tight positions, how do you kind of view? I say it as failure, but I mean, I have a very different mindset than some other people do.
I think, but that's the thing. I think it's a lot like, this is probably where the coaching part of my life comes in.
Yeah.
There's no failure. There's setbacks.
Yep.
And what did you learn?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you do the same thing 3 times and it doesn't work, then, there's something wrong with your approach, or there's something wrong with your mentality.
It's a definition of crazy or whatever, right?
Or you need to adjust. You can't do the same thing again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
If it's not working, it's not working. Eventually, you're going to run out of money, unless you're, Facebook or somebody like that.
Right.
Meta.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. Meta's getting there.
Yeah, but see, the thing, the difference for most people and those kind of companies is they can have setbacks or mistakes.
Yeah.
And they can just throw money at them. As a small business guy, you can't do that. You might be able to do it for somewhat. You got $20,000 credit limit on one credit card. You can kind of, but you can only do that for so long too, right?
Yep.
So but you've got to learn and you've got to adjust. And I think the one thing that saved A+ through COVID was a little bit of just, can we adjust? What do we have to do to make it work? Do we have to lay people off for a couple of months? Do we have to take on a different kind of contract? Do we have to offer different kind of services? As soon as you do all that, then you find yourself in a place where, okay, we can carry on.
That's a pretty, I would say most of the entrepreneurs and stuff that I talk to, that was definitely your first line is a big part of what they all talk about of failures. It's just kind of a perceived thing and something that we make to be out such a negative thing in today's society, but failure is just a good learning tool. It's a good metric. It's a good way to basically force you into making change because it just tells you what the market's telling you.
Yeah. And it's one of those things. We talk about failure too much.
Yeah.
We do. And our whole media thing now has changed into this, I don't even know what to call it. Emphasizing the bad.
Yeah. It's negativity.
It's all negativity.
Yeah, for sure.
Everything's negative. You're listening to a podcast. I'm not going to say this is my own information, but it's you hear about Microsoft laying 10,000 people off and everybody goes, oh my God, the tech world's crumbling. And it's yes, but Microsoft hired 40,000 people in the last 2 years through the pandemic. Now they're laying off 10 because they got to adjust a little.
Exactly.
And Amazon's the same way. Amazon laid off whatever it was, 18,000, whatever the number was. But they hired hundreds of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, not just tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people through the pandemic. Yep. So it's all about, it's about perception, but our perception now is so skewed to the bad,
and the media controlling what's said and what's not.
But the media is responding to what sells, right?
Right,
that's the thing.
exactly.
Now we've conditioned ourselves to want this stuff, and through the help of social media and all these other stuff. So why we're getting, it's we've taken this thing that the aliens are invading. We're shooting them down over Lake Huron. No, probably not. The reasonable person hears it on the radio and goes, I wonder what's floating above Lake Huron, because it's not the aliens invading. I know that much. Yep. And, now it's benign. They were saying it's some kind of commercial. It's a blimp that got away from somebody or something, whatever, it doesn't matter. But this whole, we've gotten to this whole conditioned response of almost panic. And you can't do that in business. You just can't. You can't get yourself into such a flux that you're going I had a meeting this morning with, somebody who's a client who's just ready to go boom. And it's okay, this probably isn't a go boom situation. This is probably, let's look at it from both sides here and figure out what's going on. And there's a medium, and then, that's not always the case, but the reality is now is you have to, what's the thing about, we used to say as coaches all the time, you can't get too high and you can't get too low, right? No matter what the situation is, you got to kind of stay in the middle. When things are going really, really good, well, okay, but let's be prepared because they're not always going to go really, really good. Yep. And you can't get too low when times are bad because there's a lot of things you can't influence.
Got to keep everybody up
so
when that's happening. So you got to keep
things moving along, right? It's business is the same.
Yeah.
And to me, the big part of business is it's the ability to just step back a little bit. Step back a little bit. What can you do? What can you control? You can control your relationship with your own clients. Yep. You can control, how you approach a job, how you plan for a job, whatever your business is. But if somebody decides that they don't like the color yellow after you painted the wall yellow, and it's okay, I can't control that. They're the client. Yep. They don't want yellow. They want blue instead. Okay. So
we've had that with way too many clients.
I'm sure you like in your business especially, right? Because I mean, when they're shooting something and it's like, well, it's it doesn't look like. It doesn't look like Star Wars. How come? I wanted this, and it's
I'm not Lucasfilms.
Exactly, right? Yeah, but you gave me a budget of $25.
Yeah, exactly.
Not $25 million. Right?
Exactly.
And I mean, you do some great stuff. I love your stuff.
Well, thank you.
It's whether it's a short little travel thing from New Zealand or whatever it is. It's like, well, that's awesome.
Cool.
I wish I could fly a drone around like that. That's pretty cool.
You can. Honestly, it's easier than you think. On the flip side of with the failure side of things, so one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast is it's an open doorway to many different avenues that people either work in or sports, music, whatever, of figuring out a little bit more of the definition of success and why today's society, a lot of it is still very metric based when I talk to people about their jobs, but where it flips for me often is when I'm talking with entrepreneurs, it's a very different story. So when you think about success in your own life, and part of it can be financial, there's nothing wrong with it, but how would you define success in your businesses and your overall kind of work-life balance? It's a big question.
Well, I just want to be sure how I answer it.
Yeah.
Work-life balance, I'll start with that one.
Sure.
For me is easy. I take off 6 weeks of the year and do my other thing.
Love it.
Now, I can only do that because I have good people. So part of success for me on the business side is not just about the dollars and cents.
Yep.
Part of it for me is we like to say that we help people, even though we're in a property service business. If somebody's got a clogged sink, we're there to help them.
Yep.
If somebody's moving into a new unit, we're there to help them. If somebody has whatever. So part of it is helping people, but part of it for me is the business itself is making sure that my people enjoy their work, grow, both as people and as employees. So I have no problem if an employee comes to me and says, hey, there's this course I'd like to take, but I really can't afford it. Could you help me out? The answer is always yes.
Yep.
Always. Hey, of course I'm legally bound to provide maternity leave, but what else do you need?
Yep.
Are you going to be able to come back? Do you want to come back? When do you want to come back? How much do you want to come back?
Yep.
So there's all these things, and especially now because when you find good people, you want to hang on to them. And the word family gets overused, and it's not family, but it's another thing I learned from my dad. My dad probably could have shut down his business 10, maybe even 15 years earlier than he did. And well, he never did really. And the one reason he never really, it kind of angered me when he passed away, to be honest, because he always wanted to go back to Alaska.
Oh, yeah.
And him and Mom had driven to Alaska at one point, and they always talked about doing it again. They never did. And part of the reason is because Dad was always worried about the business. And he didn't have to be worried about the business because he had good people.
Yep.
They could run it while he was gone. B, modern communications is at the point now that you can be anywhere and run a business.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not the guy pounding the nails into the wall,
you can talk to the guy who is.
You can talk to the guy who is.
That's right.
But I realized that part of one of the reasons he didn't shut it down as quick is because he was so worried about his employees.
Interesting.
He was worried about where these guys going to find work.
Yep.
Because they were laborers for the most part. Yes, they had some skills because they learned to run a hi-ho or they learned to drive a dump truck or whatever. But that was a big part of why he didn't shut it down.
Interesting.
And I've reached that point now myself where I only have a handful of people.
Yep.
But I would worry about them if I decided, okay, I'm going to shut things down at the end of this month because the revenue's not where I need it to be. And it'd be a lot easier for me to just do my own thing, put all the money in my own bank account. And I would miss it too. I mean, part of it for me is the challenge of making it work, the challenge of making it grow. And again, it goes back to coaching, right? It's like, give me the 16 athletes that want to work and I'll build a team. I'll build good people. Yep. And we will be successful. Now, how you measure that success can be a lot different between, different teams. And it's the same with business. Yep. There's a difference between coaching a team of under 17 male or female athletes at the highest levels in the game in North America than there is in coaching, a bunch of 12-year-olds coming out to a field in Brockville. And it's a big adjustment as a coach. I know because I've lived through it both ways, up and down. And it's hard. It's hard to turn your internal mechanism to the point where you need to be serving the people you're working with. But that's a big part of it. And it's the same in business. It's like, where are we at? Oh, we're a 4-person operation. Oh, we're a 10-person operation. There's a big difference because a 4-person operation, you know everything and anything you need to know about those people working for you. At 10, you start to lose a little bit of that.
Yep.
And it's like, how do I motivate them? How do I help them succeed? Yeah, that's a little different at 10 than it is at 4 or 5.
Yep.
But that's part of it. For me, I love that part of it. I love the challenge of that.
Do you enjoy the management side of things? Because what I found interesting is when I brought our first couple people on into the business, I was blown away by how much of my time ended up becoming management and not necessarily doing the things that I thought I needed to do at the beginning. And that's changed obviously a little bit with learning about management as a whole. But do you enjoy the actual management part and kind of like working on teams and building teams, or is that kind of secondary in terms of preference of like actually liking and enjoying it?
It's not that I don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But for me, it's important to have somebody else doing it.
Yeah.
Or somebody else segueing into doing it because I'm segueing out.
Yes.
Over the the next 3 to 5 years, I'm segueing out into being the guy standing on a glacier in BC taking a picture.
Heck yeah!
As opposed to the guy figuring out what color paint the client wants on the wall.
Yeah.
So part of what I have to do with one of my employees
is train the manager.
It's not even train the manager side of it so much because I think management for most people is kind of it's there.
Yeah,
it's bringing it out.
That's interesting, actually. Yeah,
because we all grow up managing something or someone.
Yep.
Whether it's your little sister, or being managed by your big sister, or in your case, probably both.
Not wrong, probably.
But we all grow up in. I mean, you've been successful as at school and as an athlete and all these things. But you've learned to manage. You've learned to manage fellow athletes on a team. You've contributed to the management of those people. You've contributed to the management of your own business now, and the lessons you've learned along in life from your parents, who I know well.
Yep.
And those sort of things have all contributed to you as a person. But it's in there. It's you got to bring it out.
Yep.
The biggest thing I think for most people to learn is everybody's different.
Yeah.
It's like every athlete's different.
Yeah.
You don't motivate every athlete the same way. I mean, some people try, but it doesn't work.
Yep.
It's like you can yell at some people and they respond to it. That's the only way they respond.
Yeah, that'll scare other people though.
But other people go into a shell that they never come out of.
Yep.
So you've got to know which one you're talking to, right? And you got to realize that, yes, the person I have to yell to all the time.
Yep.
I have to teach them there are other ways, because I don't want to yell all the time. I'm too old. I have a heart attack. And I used to say this to players literally. I can't yell at you all the time. We need to find another way. And this one over here, I'm sorry I yelled, but you frustrated me because I know you're capable of so much more. Yeah. So how do we get you doing that all the time?
Yeah.
So I don't yell and you don't get upset. And a large part of my coaching career, as you probably know, was on the female side.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's a little different.
Yeah, very.
People like to say it's not. You can't treat them the same.
Yep.
Men and women come to the athletic field with different mindsets.
Yeah.
Women are very, very low on self-confidence, self-esteem most of the time. Not all the time. The odd one comes along. The ones with some that come along and they're just fine. Yep. You never have that problem with guys.
Pretty much never. Yeah.
So that's the first difference.
It's balancing it out.
Exactly. And that may be the only major difference.
Yeah.
But it's a major difference.
Interesting. Yeah.
So then it's the same with employees in that this person needs a task list or they forget something.
Yep.
This person doesn't need a task list. They need a, whoa, slow down and do it well list.
Yep.
They are capable of doing everything, but they rush through it.
And then don't provide the best quality of work.
Exactly.
Or don't
Can
provide,
you just slow down a little bit?
Yeah. Because you're missing X, Y, Z.
And give me a little bit better quality.
Yeah.
Did you get everything on your list? Hey, did you make the phone calls we needed today? Hey, did you do this?
Yeah.
And it's still coaching. And it's management. You know, it's funny because here we call it coaching. And Europeans.
Management. The manager.
They call him the manager,
it's
right?
Probably a smarter term for it.
It's the better
term. Or
term.
the gaffer.
But manager's a better term.
Yep, it is.
Because it doesn't matter if it's sport or it's business.
Yep.
We call it man management, but it's person management. It's people management.
It's actually funny you say that. I listened to Jamie Carragher's podcast on the Diary of a CEO thing the other day, and he was talking about, Alex Ferguson gets all this credit in the soccer world as being the greatest manager of all time or whatever. But he was saying what's quite interesting is he was way less of a tactician than a lot of the coaches he had at Liverpool. And so he wasn't actually a great coach from like a tactical standpoint, but he was one of the best at managing people, which was figuring out how to motivate people both. Well, he actually never went into the locker room more than once or twice, I learned, which is quite interesting. But he knew how to get the best out of people.
He was a motivator.
Yep.
And he was a manager.
Yep. But he wasn't a soccer tactician like Pep Guardiola or something.
And even, I can really tell that myself.
Yep.
I am not a tactician.
Yep.
When I was coaching the Ottawa Fury, I had he's currently the head coach of the women's program at Carleton University.
Oh, yeah.
Dominic Oliveri, great coach. He was my assistant. Dom loved tactics, still does.
Cool.
It's like Dom, coach the tactics, teach him how to defend as a unit.
Yep.
Me, ladies, we can do this. We've been working hard. We'll do this. Dom's got you ready to do that. All we have to do is work hard, do this, get the ball in where we need it. We've worked on our set plays. We know everything, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And between the two things, very hard to beat.
Yeah.
Teams of 17-year-old girls, 16-year-old girls beating university teams on a regular basis.
That's awesome.
Because they're great athletes.
Mm-hmm.
They had a good tactical plan that had nothing to do with me.
Yep.
But I could rev them up.
Interesting.
Not to tell a little soccer story, but dynamic warm-ups. You know what those are? Moving, blah, blah, blah. Well, we started doing them a long time ago, like early 2000s. We were at a tournament. I think this was a district team. We were at a tournament in Pennsylvania. My girls are doing their dynamic warm-up. And this team from California walks by. Look at all these girls doing their little dance steps, blah, blah, blah. That's who we were playing, right? So what does Bill, the coach, bring up in our pregame talk? These are the guys that called you the dancers. Remember that? That's all I had to say.
Yep.
Boom, done, right?
Yep.
But if you miss that, it's a missed opportunity. And, we can go back to, not to keep talking about soccer, but...
everything comes back to soccer. I guarantee if Dad watches this, he'll say the same thing.
It's John Herdman at the World Cup.
Yeah, for sure.
John says something...
Yeah, to rile up
boys. That was to rile up his team.
Yep.
But unfortunately...
Yep.
It ended up riling up the other team as well. Because it was taken out... I'm going to say taken out of context, but it was overheard and broadcast.
Yep.
Not what he wanted. I know that for a fact as a coach. He did not want that. And then they spent the next 3 days responding to it instead of concentrating on what they needed to be doing.
Yep.
Every question was about,
why'd you tell Croatia
Why
that?
did you tell Croatia that? Blah, blah, blah. And it's the same in business. It's like if you walk down the street and ran down a competitor and standing in the middle, King and whatever, and just ran down a competitor, well, you can guarantee everybody in Brockville is going to know within the next minute and a half.
Yeah.
And it looks bad on you.
That was something I learned growing up from, I would say, a couple teenage mistakes, was how quickly, especially in a small town, and when you're trying to, eventually build into a business and stuff like that. First of all, having parents and family who are known around town does not help at all. Nope. Having red hair doesn't help at all. But like you said, in business and that kind of world, it's very quick that like everybody can know in today's world with media, social media, all that kind of stuff. So you got to be careful about how you approach those kind of things.
So growing up in Brockville as Mitchell Beatty wasn't easy, is that what you're trying to tell me?
I mean, I definitely can't complain, but it was funny, right? Difficult if I ever wanted to do something stupid.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, it's a running joke nowadays, but I'm turning 60 in another month.
Yeah.
And it's like, I pity anybody under the age of 40 now, because it's like, you guys are growing up in a time where you do anything wrong, the whole world knows.
Or you think about how many cameras there are now everywhere.
It's insane.
Everything is practically recorded.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah, and I grew up in, nowhere in the middle of rural Ontario, but even going into school and stuff, if you did something stupid, well, you might get punched in the head, but, the whole world didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, you weren't marked for life by it.
Yep.
And now you are.
Yep.
Like literally now, it's like, we're hiring right now. So we get resumes. What's the first thing, my controller does?
Yep. Go check socials. We have literally last time we put out a hiring thing. This is a note for everybody if you are watching.
Yeah.
That is literally the first thing that we do too, is we've gone and checked or talked with people who know them super well. Hey, what are the couple dumb things this person's done? Ooh, that's pretty far over the line. We're not going to continue that.
Yeah. And it's, and people post stuff they shouldn't post. And it's like, and right away, it's a reflection of decision making.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of, you as a person. It's like, we all do it.
Yeah.
But as an older adult, I think twice to start with, maybe 3 times.
Yep.
And then I just don't do it.
Yep. That's definitely something my parents harnessed, for me over the years too, because I know I saw other friends who didn't have as much. Like I would have said growing up probably that my parents were super strict. Even then they weren't super strict. They were just loving and caring with that, but keeping you with the blinders on a little bit, with a little bit of leeway. But that scene compared to some of my other friends who had complete freedom and control.
It's boundaries.
Yeah. If you don't have those boundaries, if you
don't have boundaries, you can't operate.
Yeah.
Eventually you get yourself into trouble.
Yeah. And that applies to all things.
Hopefully you don't take other people with you when you're doing it. But the reality is it's what people don't understand with boundaries is they're there throughout life. They're not just there when you're 6. They're there when you're 16. They're there when you're 26. They're there when you're 46. They're there when you're 66.
That's probably why you see so many kind of like late teenagers, early 20s get into trouble, is because that's kind of the first free reign you have, and then suddenly
free reign you have is when you go away to school.
Yeah, and then that's when you get in trouble.
That turns out.
Yeah. That's like a whole Curtis, who was in the last podcast, we talked about kind of education system and all that, and that's like a whole nother subtopic, but
it's part of growing up too.
Yes.
But it's the same thing. Like when I went away to college, did I do stupid things? Of course I did.
Didn't we all?
But it wasn't on social media the next day.
Yep.
And it's forgotten in the mists of time now. Other than if I get together with, 3 or 4 guys and a couple of girls that I went to school with, and somebody goes, "Oh, remember?"
Yeah.
Oh shit, yeah, I do.
And then you put it on a podcast though, and now it's going out to the world forever.
But that's the thing.
Do you want to share a story?
No.
That's awesome.
But that's the reality, right?
Yeah.
Now it's like, if you're in Kingston the wrong weekend early in the, it's like, oh my God, and it's on everywhere.
Yeah. It was that girl that slapped the police horse or whatever.
Exactly, right?
Got assaulting a police officer.
Exactly.
Man, that was honestly Queens stuff.
I know.
Every year, just type in Queens, Hoko, Queens, whatever.
And I coached there for a few years as a goalkeeper coach. So right, it's like, guys, let's stay at home this weekend.
Yeah.
Because if you don't,
What's a good? Do you have a good story with that? Like of any? I'd love to hear some kind of you talk about management, coaching, all that kind of stuff, but something where there's a Queen's homecoming or something like that where you tried to pull the reins in and somebody didn't obey.
Probably the best one I have, to be honest, didn't involve a university age team. It was a Fury team.
Yep.
I was coaching the women's under 17 at the time. And we traveled a lot together, the teams. So, we'd have under 12, under 12, 14, 16, 17 boys and girls teams. And we'd travel a lot together by bus to, up and down the eastern seaboard. So there was some obviously cardinal rules because you were staying in hotels together, blah, 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 no girls in boys' rooms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? One of my best players got not caught. Well, yeah, she did get caught. She got caught with her boyfriend.
Yep.
Not doing anything, but just in the room.
Yep.
But they got caught by the boys' team's coach. Okay. Just standing inside the door, talking. But against the rules, right? So I didn't hear about it. I didn't know what had happened until we got back. And then we were playing a home game. And the technical director of the club, Colin McCurdy, comes to me and say, "You got to suspend Skupek." And I said, "Well, what's going on?" "Well, she was in boyfriend's room last weekend." And I said, "Okay, fair enough. But what's happening to him?" "Well, she was in his room." I said, No. I said, "This works both ways.
Can't have a conversation with one person."
I said, "This works both ways." So he's suspended as well. If we're suspending her, we're suspending him. And he was okay with it.
Yeah.
I don't think they probably would have got there on their own, but I don't think they were going to volunteer it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, Bill's going to know that we didn't suspend him, but he's got an ass. So then, so you're getting ready to play. You have to pull this player out and you have to say you're not playing. And here's why. And she's a starter. Parents are sitting in the stands.
That sucks.
And you're not sitting on the bench.
You're suspended. You're not even dressing.
You're not dressing. And you have to go tell your parents why.
Yep.
Because I'm not having that conversation because it's not my responsibility. So, of course, she's really upset. But as a coach, you got to go, and she did. And, it all worked out. And, eventually, and everybody gets, okay, the rules are real. And we had another one, too. That was actually a call-up when we went to the North American Championships.
Not the time to
we're staying in a hotel in Tampa. And as a coach, everybody's in the room and it's an afternoon and everybody's, and it's hard because you're traveling and you want to show them the world, but at the same time you have to prepare to play. So it's like, okay, so this is a preparation time, be in your rooms, resting, and you go out in your balcony and you see one of your call-ups who's 2 years younger than anybody else on the team, and here she is down on the beach, and you're going like, oh my God, so you have to discipline them or her. And it's funny because these are good people and they're good players. Yep. This particular player, this young one, she was 14, I think at the time, is now, I don't even know what her job description is, but she works in Africa, helping promote sport for girls, and promoting basketball. And, so, they go on to lead successful lives. For sure. But at that moment, it's like, hey.
Yep.
No.
Well, I think, and
you're not dressing.
I've seen it in my own life and with other people too. But like, it's like in that moment, obviously it sucks and whatever, but long term down the road, that is way more beneficial.
It's a pillar, right? It's something you grow on and you realize. And I've talked to, there's all kinds of them, they come back to you. And, yeah, thanks for that. And, remember the time.
Did you ever have to tune me in? Trying to think. I don't think you did. But no. I think you definitely yelled at me a couple times, like what you were talking before about. I know you're better than this because you're just being lazy. But that's a little different.
But it's hard too, right? And this applies for business as well. You can get into a place where you're too comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. Oh man, that's I found that a couple of years ago is the complacency of not trying to grow and scale. Even though that's what I love doing, it was like, man, this is easy. Like.
But it's not even about growth and scale so much. It's about, are we still doing the best job we can?
Yeah,
Are we doing everything to the degree that we set out to do it at? Or have we gotten lazy? Have we slacked off a little bit?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, no, let's get that back up there a little bit. Mm-hmm. But again, you have to keep an eye on things.
Yeah.
And it's like a player. You end up in a team or you end up in a league or a situation that's middle of the pack. If you're a great player, well, what happens? You tend to regress to the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
Because you do just enough, right?
Yeah.
Instead of picking the team up on your shoulders and carrying them, you say, no, I don't want to do all that heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'll just go through. And you can do the same thing with business. And you slowly but surely lose your edge. And some competitor comes in and just does that little bit extra. And you lose
Makes a big difference.
You lose a couple contracts, or you lose a couple points, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, what's going on? What's going wrong? And it's like,
especially if you have all your eggs in one or two baskets. In all seriousnness, though,
it's true. If you have all your eggs in one breakfast, but then it's about your people too. It's like your people, because your people will catch you. Your people will tell you, hey, we're slacking off a little bit there. Like, what? How come we're not doing that the way we normally do it?
Yeah.
What's going on with that one? Why are we not following up that lead? Well, we're not following up that lead because 3 years ago we did work for them and it took us 3 years to get the money from them. Oh, okay. Oh, all right. No, that makes sense. Yeah, exactly. Why aren't we following up that lead? You know what? I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Hey, can we call that one right away and see where we're at?
Mm-hmm.
So, there's all kinds of things happen.
Yeah.
The day to day, but yeah, it's about the growth thing, I think, is very individual as far as business, and it's hard because there's a size, whether it's 1 to 4 kind of thing, where it's manageable, it's fun, it's everybody's got a role. Most people have 2 or 3, so it keeps everybody from getting bored.
Yeah.
You double that or double it and plus a little more, you get to 10, maybe 12, and all of a sudden you got people with very specific roles.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be boring.
Yep.
I know I would, if you said all day, all you're doing is editing pictures. Oh, do I get to edit a picture once in a while? Do I get to edit a podcast on the weekend? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Am I editing a podcast every day? No, because I'd lose my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are like that. So that's another part of the management of the people. You got to be careful that you're not allowing somebody to just get to the point of frustration because they're doing the same thing every day.
That's actually Barbara Corcoran, whatever, from Shark Tank. That was another podcast I was listening with her. She's the, short hair blonde.
I know.
She was talking about that same kind of thing with like, they asked her, why do you think your businesses are so successful? And she said basically that I make fun the top priority for basically every one of my employees. So kind of like you said before too, she treats them all differently because you can't have a basis across the top, but she would grab 4 or 5 girls randomly on a Thursday afternoon and be like, I got $200 that you're all going to go spend at whatever, like for yourselves. And they'd be like, well, why? And she said, just being weird and crazy and keeping it fun. Like if you can keep dynamic energy in your business, it's actually going to go a lot further to keeping retention rates and all that kind of stuff too.
Well, it's funny because when I say we, I mean me and Sarah at my business, we were talking about how we like to collect odd ducks.
Oh yeah,
because we all feel that we're odd in a way. So we're a collection of odd ducks.
Yep.
But the thing with odd ducks is they're fantastic because they're flexible.
Yep.
And then they're fantastic because it can do a lot of different things usually. But the thing with odd ducks, you got to make sure they're always doing a little bit different.
Yeah,
because if you don't, they get bored and they walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Because mostly because they're ADHD or some component of that. Well,
severe ADHD.
You're not going to find anybody more ADHD. I'm a poster child, and I've been a poster child for 50 years now.
Yeah,
but I think that's part of the entrepreneurial thing too.
Yeah,
I really do. As I've gotten older, and I've realized that what makes me is. A large component of it is, ADHD sounds too simple.
I know what you mean though.
But it's that kind of...
It's the busy mind. It's the continually trying to do new things.
The busy mind. It's finding something new and going, oh, that's really cool. What can we do with that?
Yeah.
And, 3 months later going, oh, that didn't amount to much, but oh, that's neat.
So this is actually interesting because this year was one of the first years where my wife and I were chatting with one of my aunts who kind of specializes in a lot of that kind of stuff. And we were just kind of, it was interesting for her because she, I think, often thought that, ADHD, I was doing things intentionally but it's an unintentional thing, right? So for you with busy brain and all that kind of stuff, do you have something that you find for yourself helps you kind of turn that off for a little bit?
Age.
Love it.
It's a component of it.
Yeah.
I've realized in life that as I get older, it gets less frantic. What's always turned it off for me is taking attention to either reading, photography for me. Yeah. At one time it was sport, it was playing. But I have to hyper focus. If something forces me to hyper focus,
then you can stay in it.
Then I can stay in it.
Yep.
Writing a report, not so much. Doing business paperwork, not so much. Making sure the bills are paid, not so much.
For sure.
Coming up with a proposal for a new client kind of on the fly as I'm meeting them and going, oh, we could do that, and maybe we could do this, and how long will it take us to do that? And giving them a number on the spot almost usually. Yeah. Yep, I can do that. Yep. And then I go back to the office and I get chastised for the number I said. But by then it's too late, right? Yep. But it's, I'm right more often than I'm wrong when it comes to that. So it works. Yep. But yeah, for me, dealing with that has always been what can I hyper focus on? It's like school projects, oh, it's due at 6 a.m. Oh, it's 2 a.m. I guess I better start. And that's, but because it hyper focuses you, it makes you do it. You have a timeline. Oh, I have a timeline of February 28th. Whatever. Yep. I'll get that done.
That was always the worst for me, is when you got those like syllabi at the beginning, and then it was like you'll have like 20 weeks to do your whatever paper thing, news, and then you're like 1 week out going, I was supposed to be researching for 19 weeks. Better hit the library.
But that's part of it, right? Yeah. And unless you learned that that's part of it, it's like procrastination, right?
Were you a good student with it? Like overall, you mentioned that you kind of were, but
if you measure good student by
grade
marks,
wise,
yeah, I was.
Yeah.
Was I a good student in process? And no, not at all. Huh. It's like, well, I told you the story about coming back and they wanted me to complete, a semester's work. Yeah. In basically half a semester. Well, no, 2 semesters work in basically half a semester. I thrived.
Interesting.
I had to write and produce, I think it was 15 minutes, a 15-minute video production. Yep. So I basically wrote a horror story involving one person, me, as the actor, because I couldn't get anybody else because everybody else was already tied up in things. Yep. Me as the actor, me as the photographer, me as the guy running the video, me as doing the sound, but I did it and I won an award.
Cool.
Because you're forced to do it.
Sure. Yeah.
But, normal, it would have been like, I would have ended up doing the same thing anyways. Yep. But I would have taken 6 months to get there. Instead, I got there in 6 days. Yep. Business is the same for me. It's like, yeah, you better do that. Got to get that done. I have 2 people at the office, one that does Northern Latitude stuff and one that focuses on A+. And their biggest nightmare is me. It's like, hey, we need those 2. Oh, yeah, sorry. I was supposed to give that to you yesterday. No, you were supposed to give that to me the day before yesterday. Okay, do it right now. And, you spit it out.
Mom's listening to this, I guarantee she's going, yeah, she's my bookkeeper, so she's
exactly right. And that's what Sarah's the controller for the office, and it's like Sarah there's a list. I can tell you right now,
in order for them to get their job done.
My laptop right now is sitting on my desk like this, and there's a piece of paper right here with 5 things on it that Sarah gave to me on Monday morning in our 7:30 morning in the meeting on Monday mornings. Yep. There's 5 things. 2 of them are checked off. Mm-hmm. All 5 of them should have been checked off by yesterday, but they're not. And she works from home today. So
Instead, you came and did this podcast.
Yeah, exactly, right? She works from home today, so I know I'm not going to get it. I'm not. It's not going to happen.
Have to get it done.
It's like, Mitchell wants me to do a podcast.
Yeah,
okay,
perfect.
Great.
Let's go.
Yes, let's go. I can procrastinate a little bit more.
That's so funny.
But
I can relate way too much.
But that's what it is, right? That's who I am. Yep. And then as you realize it, as you get older,
You just got to build out the people around you to make it doable.
The biggest thing is make sure you have the right people.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the same with any business. But I think that's why a lot of businesses are run by people like you and me. Because we need the people around us just to
for sure
function as a business.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have it too. I think I have enough self-awareness to know really where my strengths are, and I'll just take those 3 things, and that's how I work on my businesses. And then we're in the stage of trying to build these other people out who are better at this and who can keep me focused on this and the bookkeeping.
Not that you and I have ever talked about this, but you've also added someone in your life who I bet you pushes you along.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Right?
It's true. It is.
Of course.
Yep. That's
because
cool.
The other part of that is, from that perspective, that being the other half of a relationship, is the female component usually understands the process and the necessity more so than the idea guy does, or the idea person does. They love the person, and they love the ideas, and but they know that if you're not doing A, B, and C, and D, and E, and F, that it's not going to work. So they make sure A, B, C, D, and F. Hey, you forgot D.
Yep.
Remember we were supposed to, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that's both, thankfully, my wife and my mom.
Yeah, of course.
Because since she's still in the business, it's fantastic that she has all the logistics and thinking about those things, because that's not where I want to just get the stuff I know that I'm good at.
You want to point the camera and push the buttons, right?
Yeah, even that though, not as much. It's more the business of like the actual scale and marketing and networking and client acquisition, all that kind of stuff that I like the best. This is fun, love it. It's the tool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, but to me it's the actual looking at long-term buying business, acquiring, scaling, all that kind of stuff that I really enjoy in the marketing. But
that's cool.
This is a tool, but it's not my like diehard passion. Whereas Seth out there, he is a diehard lover for editing. So like it's great to have those people, because like you said before, I don't want to sit and I love editing and doing certain things, but I don't care. Yeah, I hate social, honestly.
Our social media is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like for both companies, for A+ and for Northern Latitudes.
Yeah.
And I have absolutely nothing to do with it.
It's the best, isn't it? That's why Emma's not here today, but if you meet her, she's doing all our socials, and it's the best.
Yeah, no.
Barely have to go on anymore.
I don't.
Yeah.
Like I literally don't. Every once in a while I go on just to see what Nelena's doing.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, yeah.
It's great.
It's good. Nice.
Yep.
Thanks. Oh, that's not where you think it is. Okay. Can we edit that one? Yeah.
Yep. Over the next kind of 5 years, we'll probably wrap this up here, but what kind of visions, goals, kind of things do you have? You alluded to some of it, because you were saying part of it, you'd like to start building that kind of like people going this way because you're going this way kind of thing, right?
Yeah, a big part for me is I want to grow A+. I think there's a big opportunity in the property services business because of aging population to start with. But,
right.
There's a lot happening that, it'd be boring talk on the podcast, but there's a lot happening in the property management world that is kind of, it's adding an extra layer. Basically, there's property management that are coming in and focusing on the actual management of the people that do the services part, where they were kind of combined before. Now they've kind of separated.
Yeah.
And we separated in 2019. So we're kind of in a good place to grow into these new expectations from property management companies. And you see it all the time now. Like you'll see property management companies that, also do snow plowing and do this and do this. And I think you'll see a lot of those will stop doing that part. They may spin off a division.
Yeah, sure.
But we want to be that division.
Yep.
We don't want the accounting and the meetings and all that kind of stuff. We want to be a service provider.
Yep.
So I think there's some growth there for sure. My big thing with that one is to grow it with people that can run it. So I can walk away in 5 years, maybe sooner, and basically charge a bill tax.
Sure.
That helps me pay my bills as I go into other things.
Of course.
But allows the business to keep running with the people that I've helped put in place that I know can do it.
Yeah.
So they can continue to work and they can continue to grow. and they can continue to grow the business if that's what they want to do. So that's A+. Northern Latitudes is kind of the opposite, in that Northern Latitudes is right now kind of a 1.5 person operation. Well, no, it's probably one, because I'm only probably there half time too. So it's a 1 person operation divided between 2 people.
Yep.
You know, and part of that for me is 6 weeks of traveling, mostly in Canada, to take pictures. And then that is when it's going to require a little more thought and growth in what it's going to be. Is it just Bill selling pictures? Well, I don't need a gallery to do that. I don't need an office to do that. I can do that from anywhere.
Yeah.
Or is there more to it than that?
Yeah.
I think there's more to it. I just haven't figured out what the more is. That's the challenge in the next few years for that one is okay, what is the more?
Yep.
You know, is it an outdoor brand? Is it is it teaching photography? Is it leading expeditions, in the Rockies? Is it whatever?
That's kind of the coolest thing. Actually, what you just said reminded me of what I think is so cool in today's world is that because of the internet and because of socials and all that kind of stuff too, there are so many aspects of every avenue now that you can go into, whether it's like, you love lights. So do you want to sell lights? Do you want to be a lighting guy? Yeah. Do you want to teach people education? Yeah. Like it's incredible.
It's there for everything and anyone, right?
Yeah.
And
the barrier to entry is practically nothing now.
There is no barrier.
Yeah.
Really.
It's cool.
And it's more a question of you as the provider, like you said, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And can you find people that want to support you doing it? Basically.
Yep.
So it's another thing. And then the third one for me right now is Talon, which is just investments. So it doesn't self-drive, but it pretty much does. That one's there to help people too.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of growth potential in the next few years in that capital lending kind of area. Whether it's for small business or individuals. I'd like to get into the small business side of it.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Here, I need $5,000 to start my business. Okay,
right.
Well, sell me on it. Tell me what you want to do.
Yep.
How are you going to pay me back? When are you going to be paying me back? You need
basically a mini VC.
Yeah, exactly. But a mini.
Yeah.
Like not this big, this big.
Yep.
Because it's like you said, there's all these little niche markets, but the only barrier usually for people is time, and time is money. It's a cliche, but it's true.
It is.
It's like if you're a single mom or a single dad and, you've got a job and you got 2 kids you're coming home to and you want to start something, you need 2 hours away from your kids. Well, you need to pay for a babysitter. You need to be able to go someplace and do that work.
Yep.
You need someplace where you can go and host a meeting. All those things are tied into it, but it's tied into money. It's like, I can find you the office space to use. I can find you this. I can even find the babysitter for you if you want me to. But the reality is you need money to pay for that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, here's your $5,000 loan. Pay me back over a year. Pay me back over 2 years. I don't care. Well, I care, but you know what I mean? It's like, I'm getting paid back.
Well, it's kind of all VCs that I've met or talked to or heard basically say when that goes out the door, I consider it gone. Yes. In a way.
You do.
Like, of course you want it back and you'll be ticked if you don't, but it's like in my mind.
The reality is you have to approach everyone like that.
Yeah, it's gone.
Like, it's gone.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting it back. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
you're going to give me half your company? No. Just
the revenues maybe.
But then, of course, like I said, then I need a fourth leg.
Yeah.
So I'm going to find a fourth leg yet.
Interesting.
Whatever that is.
Cool. Well, you've given partially of a shout out, but any of the cameras, if you want, give your socials, give websites, anything you kind of want to promote while you're on here.
A+propertyservices.ca, northernlatitudes.ca. Northern Latitudes is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Just look at the pictures. Nothing else, just go to the gallery and look at the pictures. A+ Property Services, it's self-explanatory once you get there.
Yeah. And that website
is A+propertyservices.ca.
Perfect.
And it's fun. It's one of those rare times where I wish I was 20 years younger, just because you could just keep going forever.
Yeah.
But the reality is you're not. So you got to kind of start looking at it and going, let's help some other people go.
I'm going to actually add a final question in with that, because this is something else that I wanted the podcast to kind of do. But what opportunity, not specifics, but like, I think Brockville and Thousand Islands region as a whole is getting overlooked by young entrepreneurs quite frequently, and they're often going to the big cities or another region. But do you see a lot of potential in this area for young entrepreneurs? And my answer typically is yes, because based off of the industry that we're in, we have met some crazy networks and people around here who aren't just locally connected, but globally.
It's funny. Yes, it is being overlooked. But it's funny because I've run into the same thing, especially with Northern Latitudes. I can think of 3 right off the top of my head that I've met in the last 2 months, maybe. Local people doing very Northern Latitudes kind of stuff.
Yep.
And I go, oh, I didn't even know about you.
Yes.
Oh, well, we didn't know about you. Oh, we didn't know about you. Oh, none of us knew about each other. How does that happen?
Yep.
In this day and age, right? So yes, it's very much being overlooked. I think this could be a really vibrant, creative center. Only because there's so much available. I mean, your stuff alone shows the potential from this is just a great place to live.
Yeah, I think so too. It's incredible.
I go across the country, sometimes from coast to coast in one year, as often as I can. This year, that's the plan, from East Coast to West Coast to North Coast. And I always come back. Are there some places? Are there some places that I would move to live for a short period of time?
Heck
yes.
Yeah.
But I think I would always come back.
Yep.
I have been to other places, and I've always come back.
Mm-hmm.
I've been, like you. I've been to Morocco. I've been to, the deserts of the Southern American Southwest.
You hit Iceland too, didn't you?
Iceland.
Iceland was insane.
I'm hoping to go back to Iceland this fall. And I always
come back. Yeah,
because the same things. The problem here is people are so, they're not jaded. They just don't see it anymore.
Yep, of course.
They don't because they live here all the time.
People who live on the Californian coast are like,
it's like people that live in the Rockies.
Right, exactly.
It's just a mountain.
Yeah.
Right? I go there and it's like, oh my God, look at that mountain.
Yep.
The people in Jasper go, that mountain's been there ever. It's always going to be at the end of that street. Yep. It's never moved. Right? Yep. For me, it's like, oh my God. Like, I take that picture every year. Here's the street running right into the mountain because it's a great image.
Yep.
Right? We have the same thing here with the islands. We have the same thing here with the river.
Mm-hmm.
When I worked, not to carry on, but the Kandahar project, we were based in Kingston. Most of our radio staff, our on-air staff, were Afghan refugees. Every Sunday, year-round, the Afghanis would get together to have potluck dinner at Ontario Park in Kingston. And I thought it was funny. And it was like, oh, that's really neat. Why do you do that? Oh, the water.
Mm-hmm.
Because they'd never seen that much water.
Right.
Ever.
Right. That's interesting.
There was a project in Kandahar to dam the river running through Kandahar to produce irrigation and hydroelectric. The river in Kandahar is smaller than the creek behind my house. Okay.
Yeah.
So when they get here, they have never seen water like that.
Yep. It's almost ocean like to them.
One of the greatest rivers in the world running through our front yard or backyard, however you want to look at it. And we don't recognize that.
Yep.
And it's like, that's the challenge. So for me, yes, there's huge potential here for almost any kind of new industry.
Yeah.
And by new industry, high tech, blah, blah, creative.
Yeah. We already have a massive commercial industry here too.
The new things is it's here. The space is here. This is the first time I've been to your place.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And you could do this in 1,000 places in this town.
I'm always surprised walking down in Gananoque, King Street, whatever. Gan's actually done a pretty good job with it too, but like just how many empty spaces there still are even available. And it's like, I mean, obviously I don't know those businesses or the people who are renting it out and all that, but like, I'm going, how on earth can this even be?
It takes time to change. I mean, I would say Brockville has changed quite a bit over the last few years.
Yep.
And done well.
Done
well through the pandemic.
For sure.
Places are filling up.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of it is still because of the people with those spaces still think pretty traditionally.
For sure. Yeah.
So,
which has its pros too.
And true. And part of that is parameters set in place by governing government.
Yep.
Like bylaws, like, yes, you can only use this for this, you can only use this for this, et cetera, et cetera. But there's not a lot of the outside of the box thinking when it comes to using the space. Mm-hmm. And that holds it back.
Yep.
You know, it's like me putting a gallery in a plaza in the West End. It's like no normal person would do that, you know, but I do it because I have the space. You know, part of it is I just have the space.
Might as well use it.
You might as well use it, right?
For sure.
So, but most people aren't going to think that way. They're going to say, "Oh, how can we use? You know, can we move 6 more desks in here and have so and so in here?" You know, you could, but that'd be kind of boring. You know. So, cool. Anyways, the answer is yes.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining on this. This is fun. This is cool to even just be able to catch up. It's just a casual conversation.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was good.
Thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thank you.